One of the things that struck me so far from your submission is that most of the things that you've talked about, you know, love, demonstrating capacity for leadership, or we want change and stuff like that.
Yes.
They all seem to be in the realm of the abstract, which is very important because, I mean, some of those things, you don't have to feel or see them. They're no less important, in fact, they're sometimes more important than the things that you can feel or that you can see.
Beautiful.
But then, you know, a lot of, do you want to say something?
I get what you're trying to say. They're in the abstract, yes. But we're moving to a point where we have to start breaking this abstract into critical issues.
Exactly.
From vision, from what we need to do, to actual state development plans, to national development plans that can be measured using indicators. If you say you're going to do governance, you want to say, okay, how does your governance translate? Does it translate into service delivery? Service delivery, there are specific indicators how service delivery can be measured. Does it translate into, reducing maternal mortality? Does it translate? Every single governance option, everything we need, if it's freedom of information, whatever, if it's the justice sector, if it is the justice sector, for example, you have an indicator which says you don't want people awaiting trial locked in prison simply because the process is not fast enough to deliver justice to them. So every single parameter of governance has an indicator that can be tied to it.
I was going to ask you how
we should hold ourselves accountable.
I was going to ask you how important the abstract part of this is, you know, how important it is. Is it more important? Must you get it right before you can begin to talk about the hardware?
Absolutely, you must get your destination right before you start plotting out the track at which you will achieve that destination. So the vision and the abstract. You know, a vision, a child says he wants to be a doctor, but he's yet in primary school. That is abstract. But set him up to do the exams, set him up to get into school, set him up to get to the right colleges, set him up to be serious when he's in school. He himself take his responsibility, and eventually he'll become a doctor. But if you don't start from a vision, if you don't start from saying that I'm going somewhere, I want to do something, I want to achieve something for myself, for my people, for my collective, then you wouldn't even start. And then this is where leadership comes in. If people see that there's a seriousness in the leadership, if they see that, yes, this is something we can piggyback on, people will just have to pull back a bit. Let's be less selfish as individuals, as groups.
You know what I see in all of this? You're talking about love. We must show that we do love ourselves and how much of care we show for each other. That is how maybe the international community will also perceive of us. But no, I'm coming. And now you also have related it to even the child in school and maybe the attitude of the leaders. What comes to mind at this point is national orientation and patriotism, which would have, I don't think anyone would be wrong if you say we have a lack lately in national orientation and patriotism. How can we bring back that spirit?
Well, the spirit is growing. And by the way, I used love because maybe I think love in the air. We talked about Adam Shomole getting married, but it's about bonding of people. But the word I should have used really professionally, or the phrase, was inclusive society. You want to build an inclusive society where everybody counts and everybody is reckoned with. Nigeria has a massive population, 170 million, and the population is also diverse. So the responsibility is twofold. You have to manage the mass of the population, then you have to manage its diversity. So we don't rub off on each other. And it's not easy, but you can deliberately achieve it. I mean, it's like the Swiss watch, where you have several concentric circles, different sizes, but they interlock. So the fact that we're different doesn't mean we can't be mutually supportive. The fact that we don't have the same size doesn't mean we're not of the same importance.
We all know this.
Yes.
That is it. Because sometimes I seek for answers or ways to achieving some of those things.
Yeah.
How do we get to achieve them?
You talked about orientation. We have a job there. It's about communication and speaking to each other and listening to each other. That's, quite frankly, it's the way we manage the information that we have. I mean, getting everybody involved means getting everybody to know. And know what about themselves. Something that is pretty, heartbreaking for me is that we don't teach history in this country. And you see, national orientation, how do you do national orientation without teaching history to your children? What are you orientating them towards? Or what is the basis of which? What are you telling them? I mean, this story that Nigeria has celebrated in terms of transition and elections and stuff, 57 years to come. I mean, I don't see, some of us may live to 150, but you know, that's a stretch. But at that time, what are the lessons that are going to be learned? You know, when you don't teach history, you don't learn lessons. When you don't teach history, you drive in. Right now, none of our children in second, you know, it's no longer a compulsory course and all that. So orientation starts there. Orientation starts with the body language of our leaders. It starts with the manner in which they communicate with the people. It starts with the messaging, social messaging. The private sector has a great role to play, because the private sector is the engine of growth. And people usually follow the money. They follow where they are fed. And those ones too have a great opportunity in getting more involved in things like corporate social responsibility, development work. Take, for example, I mean, look, and this is where, what I mean, where we all work together. You have initiatives like the Bill Gates Foundation. Thankfully, we have in Nigeria people like Tony Elumelu coming up with things like this, even Dangote. And they're coming up with these foundations to show that, look, it's not just about growth, economic growth. After all, it's not everyone who gets fat that is healthy. So you can make all the money in the world or be so much richer and have your GDP hitting the roof. But if it's not inclusive, if it's not reflective in the human beings of the society and the people, in short, the long and short of it is that the people should be the denominator or the measuring factor of where we are going and where we are in terms of the quality of life and how included they are in the system of things.
You know, inclusive development is very key.
Yes.
And over the years, we have realized that when people deliberately ignore some sectors or some individuals, you get some kind of revolt from those particular sectors. Now, I'm trying to see how this inclusive development can help strengthen our institutions to the extent that a time will come, you don't need a stronger person or a strong person to head such institution, but it will definitely drive itself and move the nation forward to where everyone ordinarily would want to see it.
Well, you know, the basis of inclusivity. I mean, the opposite is having an exclusive arrangement.
Absolutely.
Yes, is voice and accountability. Right. You know, give voice to. Let's voice to the people and accountability from government or those who hold positions of responsibility. So by doing that, you have a dialogue going on. You know, if you have a dialogue with someone, right, you will include, it's natural you include the person. Because in the process of having a dialogue with someone, you get feedback. And look, even before you grow, you must, or let's put it this way, you put a policy on ground, you know, you don't just continue to implement the policy, you know, as if to say the policy must forever be cast in stone. At some point in time, you want to measure whether that policy is actually hitting the purpose of which it was put together. And before you do that, you must have feedback from those who you have directed that policy to.
Mr. Fagunro,
yes,
I've been listening to postulations and fantastic
postulations.
Okay. I've been your submissions. Maybe that's the word I should have. Listened to your submissions and fantastic. They outline the processes, but a lot of people will tell you that these are all rhetorics. They've heard it before. You've talked about, one of the things you talk about is vision and the leader.
Yes.
One person.
Yes.
As the whole of Nigeria is
yes.
one person enough
yes.
to move this whole country to the practicality of doing these things so that we get beyond the rhetorics and see.
At every point in time, one person has to do something. It will always count on one person. It took President Jonathan to accept these elections, right, and to congratulate the winner. It only took one Jonathan to move this country forward. It took a person like General Buhari, go and read his speech. The reason why a number of people are visiting Buhari today is because of the speech he gave in victory. It was a brilliant speech. It touched all the nerves. It was not over-celebratory. It didn't make any negative. It was a very, very civilized speech, purely like a statesman. So it always will take one person at some point in time too. The anchor man who reads the news or who captures a story that is a critical story, it took one person to do that. It will always take one person, and at the same time it will always take all of us.
Now that all of us,
yes,
the rest of the team now, yes, coming together, would you talked about feedback.
Yes.
Would you get adequate feedback from human capital that has not been properly developed?
That is the point. You see, all of us is in different groups. There are different all of uses. The different sector provided there are all of uses. All of us have, there are different groups, there are different concerns, there are different interests. And this is where the beauty of civil society is, that captures or articulates all this. And that's why government is not a unitary government. That is why you have states. That is why you have local governments. That is why you have CDAs, Community Development Associations. This is why you have the market women. This is why you have religious groups. Each has a responsibility. Each has a leadership. It is time for us to take ourselves a bit more seriously than we have hitherto taken ourselves. By taking ourselves more seriously and our leaderships responding in that way, and the tone has been set. The tone has actually been set. And this is why we have the kind of atmosphere we have now in Nigeria. This is that's why we kind of atmosphere that quite a number of, other countries are, because whether we like it or not, if you look at the map of Africa, it's like a gun. Where Nigeria is situated is like a trigger. There is so many things. It's a no-brainer that Nigeria is critical, Nigeria is special. And Nigerians are very, very special people.
I really